Hello and welcome to As It Comes, Life from a Musician's Point of View. I'm Davina, I'm a freelance cellist based in London, and I'm lucky enough to have had a bit of playing work come my way this week. Now, in the COVID era, this presents a new set of challenges. In previous episodes, I've already spoken about playing at a COVID-safe wedding in the summer, as well as catching the wrong train on my way to my first orchestral engagement in 6 months. But I've got to say, there's a whole new level of peripheral stress involved when taking on a gig these days. It was stipulated that no players were to travel to the studio via public transport. Fine, I'll drive. Only thing is, I haven't driven further than my local Tesco in however long. Does my long-distance vision even exist anymore? Will I remember which lane to get into at Hyde Park Corner, the most notorious roundabout of roundabouts? Next, before the session, everyone was to have a rapid flow test outside the studio. Fine also, and completely fair enough, but a bit stressful. How stink would that be, to be offered a gig for the first time in ages, wait around for your result, and then test positive? I mean, I have no reason to test positive, but you just don't know with this virus. After some intense nasal penetration and a 20-minute wait, I was declared negative, which was a relief, but was then faced with 1.5 hours to kill. It's not like you can just hang out at the studios these days, what with the enforced limited capacity. Likewise, you can't just sit in the canteen. But where to go? Sure, you can get a coffee, but then what? You can't sit in. You also can't really hang out with your friends because that goes against the distancing rules. I opted to sit on a park bench motionless, silently, alone, and listen to a podcast. Made it back to the studio with the usual dance of sidestepping everyone you see to make sure you're not too close. But as soon as I heard the A to tune to, all of a sudden, everything was back to normal. The least stressful part of the day was the gig itself. I'm relieved that I still know how to read music and play my cello. In some respects, it's like riding a bike, theoretically. I say theoretically because I'm rubbish at riding a bike. But amidst all the chaos of the pandemic and whatnot, it's comforting to know that music making, as sparse as it is at the moment, is the one constant in our lives, and it must be treasured. My guest this episode is Dwight Pile-Gray. He's a horn player and conductor, as well as the creator of the Black Maestro podcast, where in short 5 to 10 minute episodes, he shines a light on black musicians that have been overlooked throughout history. We had a chat recently about how the pandemic has changed and will continue to change our approach to music making in our lives, making space in the industry, and promoting excellence, as well as what Dwight likes to get up to when he's not making or thinking about music. Here's my chat with Dwight. Dwight, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. So we're here to talk a little bit about your journey as a horn player, as a conductor, and also as a podcaster, which we'll get to in a minute. But first of all, how's the whole pandemic been for you? I mean, obviously everyone's lives have been turned upside down. How are you finding it all now that we're well into 2021?
Okay, well, firstly, thanks for inviting me. So I've been really looking forward to being a guest on your show. So that's good. What can I say about the pandemic? If I'm really honest, I quite like it. To be honest, I quite like the fact that I'm able to get on with stuff, research, and look at stuff that I've had to put on the back burner. I also need to say that I'm really lucky because my day job is in the army, playing music in the army, and so we haven't had a lot of playing time, but we are still employed and getting paid. We're not furloughed or anything like that. So I'm an extremely fortunate musician in that respect.
It really makes you count your blessings, doesn't it? Putting everything into perspective. I think if you're able to have a little bit of money coming in, you have a roof over your head, you have your health, most importantly.
Yeah. All of those things are important. And in this time, I've had a lot of time to do my research and, doing some teaching at university. I've got some conducting students and some master students. It's really meant that I can focus on stuff that I want to do. I've had some time to learn some new skills. So, it's all been, for me personally, I know it's been okay, but I absolutely understand for other people, it's really rough.
Yeah. How were you finding it before the pandemic, juggling all those different things? Because I know for me personally, my capacity for work has sort of gone down because obviously my workload has decreased. So, there will sometimes be days where I think, oh, I've got one commitment on today. Oh, I'm absolutely exhausted. How would I have been able to juggle that beforehand?
Yeah, I marvel at all the stuff I used to do when, I was going to work every day. And I think, how did I manage to do that? Now I have a diary that's split up into sections. So 8 to 8:30 to 9. And that's how I do my days. And it's working well. I think people are tending to work longer hours though. So rather than trying to fit everything into 9 to 5, my day might start. So my day started at 10 this morning, but I'll probably go on till 8 or 9 this evening, still doing work. So we are kind of adapting to the situation, and I'm not sure how we'll manage to go back to what life was like before.
No, it might be a total shock, won't it? But I think also not having to factor in travel as well. So there have been times where I've opted to start my working day at 8:30 in the morning. But I would absolutely abhor the idea, I think, back in the day, if I had to start at 8:30 on the other side of London.
The fact that people don't have to do maybe a 3-hour a day commute has really opened up people's eyes, I think, to the possibilities of working remotely.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
It is. And hopefully it allows us to become more flexible in the future as well. If this is an option, not having to travel around so much.
I hope so. I don't believe, though, that people really want to embrace technology, if I'm perfectly honest. So I know we all have to use Zoom and stuff. And, I'm a techie guy, so I love all that kind of stuff. But I think people are using technology because they have to. And once we get out of this, whenever that may be, I suspect people will want to go back to the old ways of doing things, because they don't really trust their internet connection or their provider, or security on WhatsApp or whatever it is the problem.
Whatever is the new problem of the day. Yeah, for sure.
So It's kind of crazy. So I believe that we as classical musicians, as opposed to pop musicians, funk, whatever, we are really slow on the technology thing. We're way behind the curve. I'm not sure how we're going to really go back to concerts and stuff, but that's maybe something for later on. But
I think it's a good idea to embrace a little bit of it, at least, isn't it? As you say, we are quite slow. I mean, we still, as string players, we're still playing instruments that were based on a design from 300 years ago.
Don't get me started on that. I mean, we could be here all day now. So, I'm 52, although I didn't go to college when I was 18 through things, but we'll come on to that later. But I think people who are my age, who went to college in, whenever it was, the late 80s, early 90s, there is a different dynamic for them, because what they did at college was they did performance. That's what they did. And then they went out and got a job. People who are younger, when I went to college, we did a whole load of things. We had a whole portfolio of things that you could build up. And so it's much more likely that the younger generation of musicians will be able to flourish post-COVID, because they have portfolios. The older generations, people who are my age but went earlier, this is a thing that they know. This is what they do. And so I think it would be much harder for them to kind of incorporate technology into their practices. Yeah. It's very difficult, I think.
That's interesting. I think that it's a necessity. If you're coming out of college now, you're going to have to be a lot more versatile, a lot more entrepreneurial, and not just be so narrow-minded. I don't know if narrow-minded is the word.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
One-track mind kind of thing.
Yeah, or let's say narrow focus, perhaps.
Yeah, it's a bit more tactful.
Yeah. It's a difficult situation for everybody. And I was reading something on some musicians, on people who haven't worked since last year. And I was just incredulous that, they haven't worked and are no work. And also they're kind of falling through the cracks because they can't get universal credit and because of some crazy. So how we're going to survive in the future is absolutely beyond me.
Bring on that entrepreneurial spirit, I say.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before going to college and everything. So tell me a bit about your musical journey. So you're primarily a horn player.
Well, yeah, I suppose. Yeah, once upon a time. So I'm one of 4 children. My parents came to this country from the Caribbean. We had a piano in our house, even though my parents didn't play the piano. So we all had to play the piano, firstly, and we all had to play a second instrument. My older brother, he was the trombone. My second brother played the clarinet. My little sister played the violin, and they were all rubbish. Simple as that. They were all rubbish at them. No, they weren't rubbish musicians. They were rubbish at their instruments. And I will always say to people, I was chosen by the horn.
Right.
And there's a difference there. So they chose their instruments. I was chosen by the horn. And in that respect, if my father had said, actually, you're not very good at the trombone, why don't you play the violin and swap them round, then it would have probably been better, because I'm not even the best musician in my family. Simple as that.
Right. Well, what do you mean that the horn chose you?
So when I was very young, I heard Dennis Brain playing on the radio, and I fell in love with the sound of the horn. And then not long after that, there was an opportunity at school, and the teachers just said, would I like to play the French horn? Just like that. Okay, cool. And so I played the French horn with another guy, and we only had one horn in the school, and we had to take it home 1 week each for practice. And he was rubbish, and I wasn't. And then they decided that they had 2 trumpets, and they'd put us both on the trumpet. And he was really good, and I was rubbish.
Ah, well, there you go.
So I gave up the trumpet, and he still plays the trumpet now. He's like head of music over in Essex. And so that was his instrument. He was chosen by the trumpet. And then I went to secondary school. I think when I got to about 13, I had the opportunity to play it again, and that was me. So it's a different thing. I fell in love with the horn, but actually the horn through the universe said, yep, I want you.
Yeah, through all the cosmic circumstances,
it
found its way with you, not the other guy, not your brothers and sister.
To me. And actually, if my brother had chosen or been chosen by the flute, he might have been better suited to the flute or the saxophone or the trombone, whatever. They just didn't find the right instrument, so they stopped playing, which I find really sad. Everybody has their right instrument. I think everybody has the right instrument for them, but not everybody finds their right instrument. I mean, you could even be playing the clarinet and be really high level achiever on the clarinet. Might not be your right instrument, though.
That's true. Yeah. You might play very proficiently, but you might not necessarily find the way to communicate in the way that was perhaps destined. Yeah.
I love the horn. I absolutely adore it. I just love it in a way that I just can't love other instruments. Honestly, I just, I play a bit of cello.
Do you really?
A tiny little bit. I don't love it. I play guitar. I don't love it. I like it. I don't love it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So, for example, what's one horn solo or horn piece that just gives you that feeling?
To be honest, I'm not really a horn piece player. I don't really like horn music per se. I like music. So if I listen to some Mahler with horns, and I just think, it's just
breaks your heart a little bit. Yeah.
Whereas I couldn't feel like I would never feel like that for the guitar.
Yeah.
Never. I like it, but
yeah, but that's okay. We can like things, but then we can absolutely adore other things as well.
Yeah. So that's me as a horn player. But I always wanted to be a conductor. To be honest with you. Mm-hmm. So being the nerd that I am, we were playing Type 5 when I was at school, and my father had a recording of it. Second movement where the brass coming, dee da da dee da 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 da. Bass trombone blobs in. I went, that's not right. I've got to check that. So I went and got a score. I was like 14, dickhead. And I said, I knew it was wrong.
Were you the angry person writing into the local newspaper?
No, it was just a record. I knew it. And it was from there. I said, right, okay, and that was me.
I mean, I got to say, Chike 5, second movement, that's a good horn bit.
Yeah, massive solo. Yeah, I mean, probably every young horn player has either been in a section with that or had to play it. It's real nerve-wracking. You know, I did it when I was like 14, 15, and it was pretty nerve-wracking, but you know, when you're 14, 15, don't have any fear, so you just get on with it.
Yeah, I think doing those solos and things in youth orchestra, you don't have the baggage of previous performances hanging on you, so you just think, this is a nice solo, and you just blast your way through it. It's when you get, you know, a little bit later after college, when you're doing it professionally, and the gravity of the situation really comes in.
Oh God, I would never do it professionally. I wouldn't play that solo professionally, not me. No, thanks.
Yeah, better to listen to someone else do it and enjoy it.
Yeah. And then clap them as well done.
Yeah, rather than have the heart palpitations.
Yeah.
So one thing that's really been keeping you busy throughout this pandemic, one of your pandemic projects, I'm calling it, is your podcast, fellow podcaster. So it's called the Black Maestro podcast, and it's a series of short episodes profiling Black musicians throughout history that perhaps have been overlooked by the history books and recordings. What I really enjoyed about them is that they're all quite short snippets, so quite good for someone like me who doesn't have the best attention span. But what I really liked is I could just sit down of a lunch break and just listen and learn something new. So tell me a little bit about your motivation for starting the podcast.
I had a blog before, and I had lots of kind of semi-dissertations on there. I just thought that it's much easier for people to listen to stuff. I prefer to listen to stuff than to read stuff.
I'm the same.
But I don't want to try and give people a lecture. Who wants that? Nobody wants that. So I thought that I would just do a series of just like little shorts. They're between 5 and 10 minutes. It just gives people some information, 10 minutes. It's really easy. You can listen to it wherever doing something. And then it's up to you whether then you want to go and find out some more about it or not.
Yep.
And it's as simple as that. And that's all I want to do. Just put your toe in the water, and then it's up to you. I think that's a better way than trying to ram it down people's throats, if I'm perfectly honest.
It's accessible. I think one thing that's really commendable is that you're able to put in all this information in such a short amount of time, because it's quite difficult to really profile a musician, maybe someone that people haven't really heard of, in a short space of time. You really have to make all of your words matter in that sense. So how do you go about writing these segments?
For me, it's about doing something specific for that particular composer. So I'm not giving you a whole biography about their life and all of their works. I'm saying, for example, Joe Bloggs, he was born in this, and this is one of the things that he did. And that's the thing I'm focusing on. Yeah. So it's not about his whole catalogue, you know, that he met Jane Bloggs. Nobody cares. What they care about is this tiny little thing that's interesting. Yeah. And then they go, oh, okay, I can go off and look at Joe Bloggs. Oh, he did this as well, and he did this, and he did this, and he did this, rather than, you know, smash everything all together in one thing. It also means that later on, I might revisit Joe Bloggs with something else.
Yes.
Another 10 minutes on Joe Bloggs's, you know, second symphony. So, and I think that's a better way to go. I mean, it's not just about those. I mean, I've got one that I'm releasing soon, which is, he's not a composer, he's a conductor. So I'll do a little 10-minute thing on him, and then we see how we get on. And
that way it becomes like a form of storytelling, because I think that's what the audio medium is really good for, is for listening to stories, listening to anecdotes. You were saying people get put off by lectures and things being rammed down their throats because it's just facts and figures. And for me personally, I find that quite difficult to listen to.
I mean, I do music because I love it. I actually love music, as you do. You know what it's like. It's my whole life, And it's fun, and I want other people to have fun too. It's not fun if somebody's sitting there saying something totally boring.
Yeah.
Telling
Blah,
you,
blah,
I'm
blah.
not interested. Yeah, that's boring. So I want to make it short and snappy and relevant, and then people can say, "Oh, that was all right. I don't know anything about classical music, but that was all right."
Yeah. You have to be able to transmit your love for the music in this form.
I hope I do, and I want to make it fun. And I have this big thing about us as classical musicians because we're pretty straight. And that's the thing I've been saying to my own conductor students. I play the horn the same way as my teacher, who was taught by a guy, who was taught by a guy, who was taught by a guy, taught by a guy who played in the 19th century. I'm still, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why would you do? Yeah, the same for you, That's what we do. And then you're taught, there's no movement. You can't remove music from dance. You're playing a dance movement and we're sitting there like this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I think we become quite obsessed with replicating because it's a huge legacy, obviously, that we're carrying on this Western classical music tradition. But we need to bring something new to it as well. And it kind of ties in with what you were saying before about the older generation, perhaps, I'm not going to say everyone in that generation, perhaps struggling with, what to do next, given these unprecedented times. Because we need to bring something new to it so that it can continue.
Yeah, so I've got some students at college and they're kind of scared about what they can do. And I'm saying, but I know we're in a pandemic, but we are absolutely in a time where we can do anything we like. You can experiment with technology and be innovative in all the things to take forward what we can do with our art in the next 10, 15, 20 years. That is exciting. Yeah. I know that the times are rubbish, but the fact that we can just do whatever we like, oh my God. Yeah. It's just brilliant.
It is pretty exciting. I definitely think so. You were saying before how, you've actually quite enjoyed your time during the pandemic, and you definitely see the differences of people who have approached this time. You can either think, well, okay, I've got this time, I'm going to pursue my own projects, or you can think, oh, I really wish I was still doing that concert that I was booked for last year. But what one's going to happen? What's actually going to have a future?
Exactly. So, and it's about testing things. So with one of my orchestras, we are doing a kind of virtual rehearsal. Now, I know loads of people have been trying to do virtual rehearsals, but the way that we're doing it is that we are just getting a recording and everybody is playing along to that recording. And firstly, it means that you're just in your house, so you don't have to worry about other people hearing what you're doing. Secondly, it means you can actually play repertoire that you wouldn't necessarily play because you don't have 24 horns to do Mahler 29 or...
Yeah, you don't have to book all the players. Yeah.
So you can do that, but everything is all in there.
Okay. I assume everyone's on mute, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
What a mess.
Yeah. It means that you, as a player who hasn't practiced for a year, now you've got something to do, and it gives you some kind of focus. And it also means that the stuff that you were doing in terms of how you're practicing, you can challenge yourself a little. The fact that everybody's there, and also it gives them the kind of social interaction that they've been missing. I just think it's a really good way to prep and prime people for when we actually get back into rehearsals. Because people now are starting thinking, oh God, I better practice, even though nobody's going to hear what you're doing. Yeah. But for their own self-worth, they do so. So things like that are really excellent. Take that further and further. We're now starting to see that we can do performances remotely. We can do streaming into people's homes, places of work, whatever it is. And that's where our new battleground, I suspect, is going to be. It's not going to be in South Bank Centre. It's not going to be in the Albert Hall.
They're going to be new environments, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing something new next week which probably wouldn't have really happened so much before last year. They're filming a string quartet playing some music which reflects art in an art gallery in London. And that's the kind of thing that, like, oh, that would have been very, very innovative or not really heard of, back before coronavirus. But we sort of have to do these new things. And so you can't be camera shy anymore, can you?
Yeah. Partly it means that we're going to break out of this crazy thing where classical music is in this little box.
Yeah.
And only a certain section of society can get involved in it.
Yeah. If it means that we're more accessible and more people can access this kind of music, then I think that's a great thing.
Access, that's one of my big things as well. I just kind of don't understand where this notion that classical music is kind of this cerebral art that can only be understood by people who've got 14 degrees and, been to Oxford and Cambridge. Come on.
I know. I think it's just a myth that's perpetuated.
Don't get me started on that one, though. I might get myself in trouble.
But I think part of it, talk about it a little bit, but part of it is this deep insecurity as well. So you get these people who are talking about classical music in a particular way because they feel like they should. And if they don't, they'll be caught out, they'll be called an imposter, and they'll be booted out.
Yeah. It's like, clapping in between movements. Shh.
How dare you?
Yeah. Shh, stop it. I mean, I don't care. And if you want to clap, brilliant. I'm all for that. But because of this whole kind of 19th century thing that we talked about, on and on and on and on and on, sit down and bow tie and rubbish.
I know. And one thing that's been excellent during the pandemic is like blasting symphonies at home and being able to sing at the top of your lungs. You can't really do that in the concert hall, can you?
Well, no, absolutely not. I mean, you would be ejected, but in a nice way, because obviously the ushers these places they're not like bouncers in a club.
Show you the door.
Lightly show you the door, yeah.
Yeah.
But if we're going to smash the system up, which personally I'm all in favour of, I do have a problem with the whole kind of, let's smash the system, let's get rid of these dead white guys, blah, 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 rubbish. Okay. We have to understand classical music is a white Western European art form. That is what it is. Okay, so you can't turn around and say, right, we need to stop listening to these dead white guys. Well, dead white guys actually made it. That's what they did, and there were some women who composed too, not as many as white guys, and there were some black guys, there were some Asian guys, but not as many as white guys. We just need to add these guys into that, not take away the guys who are there. So that's kind of the thing. But once we're doing that, let's just kind of open it up and say, yes, they're there, but we can be relaxed about it. You don't have to cry in St. Matthew's Passion. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I'd cry in St. Matthew's Passion for completely different reasons, being a cellist. Yeah, exactly. It's about creating space. It's not taking anyone else's space away, but it's just shining a light on more things.
That's all we need to do.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Hopefully there are lots of people who feel the same way as I do, and we're moving towards a situation where we can introduce other composers, but also I just have to say, not if they are rubbish.
That's true.
Yeah, I am only about promoting excellence. So I'm not interested in any composer, whatever colour or gender they are, if their music's rubbish, because there's no point in promoting that. Why would we do that?
Yeah.
But some people think that, oh, well, there aren't enough black composers, so let's give this guy, let's promote his music. But he's composing for a comb and a piece of tissue paper. That's rubbish.
The tokenistic kind of vote. Yeah.
Why would you do that? I mean, that just doesn't do anybody any favours at all. So let's get the best of the best. It's as simple as that.
It's always good to be driven by quality. Quality will always speak for itself eventually.
Exactly, and that's what we want to do. So if we can only get, for example, 2 black composers at this time, because their works are excellent, then that's what we do, and we promote those guys to the hilt. And I say guys for everybody, dudes, everybody, and that's what we do. We don't promote 5 guys and 3 of them, have never composed before, because that's just ridiculous.
So speaking of excellence, what would be your recommendation of a performer, a composer that you think deserves more recognition?
Oh my God. I'm going to give you 2. So first I'm going to say Florence Price. Now, probably everybody in this country who plays classical music knows about Florence Price right now. She's really common currency, and she's common currency because she's excellent, and she's a black woman composing at the beginning of the 20th century. I mean, brilliant. So I would urge people to go and listen to some of her works. At the moment, I'm championing Nathaniel Dett, also early 20th century. He was a Canadian. His works also excellent. And for one reason or another, we know that these guys have been overlooked, but the quality of their work speaks for itself. They're worth uncovering. That's what I say.
You may or may not know I have a segment in my podcast called the Wildcard Question Round.
I've been looking forward to this.
Great! I love to hear that because some people really freak out. So this is where you get the opportunity to choose what I ask you next based on 3 choices that I present you. So your topics are non-musical pursuits, essential listening, and travel.
Ooh. Non-musical pursuits.
Okay, so what is something you like to do away from music?
Walk my dogs.
Dogs? Plural? Tell me about your dogs.
So I got 2 dogs. I have a miniature schnauzer called Lulu. She's 8 years old. She was my birthday present 8 years ago. My wife thought that I needed to have a friend. So she bought me a dog. So clearly, my wife is not my friend. So it's really weird. So she's lovely. And I have another dog. She's just sleeping down here.
Oh, guest dog caster. What kind of dog is she?
She is a miniature schnauzer and a poodle cross. Come here, lovely. And her name is Suki.
Suki.
And
oh, hello.
There she is. We're hoping that there's some puppies cooking in there, we hope. So we've just taken her to a young beau a couple of weeks ago.
So lots more doggies. Oh, that's really exciting.
Yeah, so I hope that the magic has happened and that there's some puppies cooking inside her. So that's it. And to be honest with you, I take my dogs out every day as one should. And I have a whole life of dog walking. So I know loads of people. It's kind of weird. So I have this other circle of friends that I only know through walking my dogs.
Yeah, because I imagine you'd see the same people at the park and everything, right? And you get into the same routine, the same cycles, and you know each other's dogs.
yeah, and actually, lots of stuff about them. So one of the ladies I walk my dog with, it just so happened that she likes classical music. It was brilliant.
It's a small world.
Tiny.
It just goes to show that classical music touches all walks of life, even the dog walkers, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I find that walking my dogs first thing in the morning, just gives me some quiet time, gives me some time to kind of reflect on what happened yesterday and what I've got to do today, and just, not really concentrate on anything apart from having a lovely time with my doggies.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds very therapeutic.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Love it.
Lovely. Great. Well, thank you for your answer to the wildcard question round. I'm always very enthusiastic to hear about people's pets, dogs, cats. So
we have cats
thanks
too.
For that. Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How many cats have you got?
2, Sydney and Mabel, and Suki's their mummy. So when we got them, they were about 10 weeks old, and Suki was just coming up to a year, and she just adopted them, and they, used to cuddle up to her and sort of disgusting.
No, but I like that. It's interspecies love.
They absolutely adore her. So it's the weirdest thing. So they curl up with her, and sometimes they sleep together on the chair. And
they probably think, "Oh, this dog is a nice, lovely duvet."
Yeah. And they also like the dog treats, but that's another weird.
Oh,
yeah,
that's a bit weird.
Well, I think maybe they think they're actual little dogs because she's a dog. Maybe that's what they think.
True. Yeah.
So we've got a whole house full of pets.
Dwight, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. It's been fantastic speaking to you about your approach to the pandemic and your pandemic projects.
Yeah.
So where can people find out more about you and your work and your podcast?
Well, most importantly, my podcast, but it is called The Black Maestro. You can find it on Spotify, and there are other podcast platforms available. So you can find it on some of those too. I'm just updating my own personal website now. I've got some things have just happened in the last couple of weeks that are going to be quite exciting, but I can't say anything about them. There's an embargo on it right now. So so something exciting's happening for me, and that will go on my website, and people can see what I'm up to in terms of that. So yeah.
Thanks for that. We'll hopefully keep up to date with everything that you're up to, and thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thanks for inviting me. I had a really great time. So cheers.
Hope you enjoyed my chat with Dwight. Please check out the show notes for a link to Dwight's podcast, The Black Maestro. As mentioned in the chat, they're short 5 to 10 minute episodes providing little snippets of information, so they're very easily digestible if you've got a few minutes free. Dwight mentioned the composers Nathaniel Dett and Florence Price in the conversation, and has very kindly sent me some recommendations of pieces by the two. So I've compiled them into a Spotify playlist, which you can listen to after you finish this episode. Included are Price's Symphonies No. 1 and 4, and fun fact, in both, she's replaced the third movement, which is typically a scherzo or something, with a juba dance. Dwight tells me that the juba was a dance imported into the United States by slaves originally in Charleston, and it's thought to have originated in the Jumba region in the African Kingdom of Congo. I recommend listening to those movements. They're certainly very catchy. The music will be in your head long after listening to it. I'd love to hear more of this in the concert hall going ahead. Indeed, this week, when I was having a YouTube binge, I came across a recent excerpt played by members of the Colorado Symphony, all socially distanced, with masks and everything, but with a dance choreography as well. So I hope we're seeing an increase of Florence Price's music being performed. And as mentioned in our conversation, the pandemic is giving musicians reason to explore new ways of presenting music. Very exciting, and good for me to get a bit of variety in my YouTube algorithm aside from cooking and Zelda videos. Don't judge. That's it for today. Special thanks to Ros Nagy for my logo and Daniel Elms for my jingle. Massive thanks to Dwight Pile-Gray for being my guest this episode. And as always, thank you for listening. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can now donate and buy me a coffee on my coffee page. Link in the show notes. Get in touch at asitcomespodcast@gmail.com or on the website asitcomes.com, where you'll also find all previous episodes and transcripts of the podcast. You can also get in touch with me via Instagram and Facebook, where I highly recommend you give me a follow and a like at asitcomespod. Remember to rate, review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you to those who've already done so, and thanks for continuing to spread the word. Chat to you soon and take good care. Bye!